So it's time to get started. So for the first tutorial, what we actually want to do is just create a basic rectangle. So we're just going to construct a rectangle. And to do that, as I mentioned from the view menu, there's a lot of different view windows that you can have open in Geogebra depending on what you want to do. For this first tutorial, all we want to do is create a rectangle. We're not really going to need this algebra view. So if you go to the far right of the graphics view, to that side triangle, and click on that, you can get different perspectives. So this is preset perspectives that GeoGebra has depending on what you want to do. So what we're in right now is the algebra perspective. We can go to the geometry perspective if we just want to do geometry. We're not concerned about the algebra. It's also got a spreadsheet view, which we'll talk more about later, but you can enter various points or do various statistics here and see that reflected in your graphics view. We can go to the computer algebra system perspective where we can enter our symbolic algebra commands, let GeoGebra do the symbolic processing and reflect the results in the graphics view. It has 3D graphics starting with GeoGebra 5, so you can go here to get 3D graphics and manipulate those around. And then it also has a probability calculator. So what we want to do here, as I mentioned, is just do a basic rectangle. So all we're really going to need is the geometry view. So we'll click on the geometry perspective. And so to set this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off the axes. We won't need that. And then we'll turn on the grid. So we kind of have a nice view of the grid when we're creating our points. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go up to the option menu. And for labeling, we want to make sure that new points only is selected. And that'll just label new points. It won't create labels for anything else. So the first thing that we're going to do now to create the rectangle is we're going to create a line segment. So go under the line toolbar, select segment, and then you just want to select a coordinate that you want to start your line segment. Just click that and then go over to where you want to end the line segment and click again. And that creates a line segment. You can see it's created labels for the points A and B. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a perpendicular line. So go under the next to the line toolbar where you have the ability to create the perpendicular, parallel lines and various things, and make sure that perpendicular line is selected, and then click on the line that you just made, and that'll create this perpendicular line. But before you click again, make sure you move all the way over here to point B. Make sure you can see point B when we're on it. You can see how it kind of snaps to it and the point gets a little bit larger. You want to make sure that you've done that, or the points won't be, or the line won't be connected to point B and you won't get a proper rectangle. So once you have that, go ahead and click, and that'll actually make a perpendicular line that goes through point B. And then so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a point C. So we're just going to create, so go to the point menu, make sure point selected. So on this line that we just created that goes through point B, again, when I move over that and I'm going to put something on that line, you can see how it gets, the line itself gets bolder. So just find out where you want that line to be, or where you want your new point to be. That'll kind of be the top line of the rectangle. Click that point, so it'll make that also on that line that we just created. And so now we have a point C. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go and create a parallel line to this first line that we created, AB. Click on that, and now we'll create a parallel line. We just want to drag this up to our point C, and I'll go all the way over here just to make sure that, guarantee that it's going to be actually go through the point C, and then we will click, and so now we've got the top side of our rectangle. And then so I'm just going to create a perpendicular line now to AB to create this last side, and I'm going to make sure that goes through point A, like so. Okay, and you see that we're still missing one point here. So where do we want that point to be? You want it to be where this line is intersecting the line above. So in order to do that, we'll go to the point toolbar, we'll select the intersect, and now we'll select this line, and we'll select this line, and you can see it'll create point D for us at the intersection of those two lines. And so now we've got the basic outline of our rectangle. We want to go create a polygon through those points. So go to the polygon toolbar, select polygon, and now you want to start from A, click on each of these points of our rectangle. You can see how it starts to draw in the shape of the polygon. Make sure each of those points are selected. And now to finish this, we're not quite done because GeoGebra doesn't know when we want to stop. So it's only going to stop when we go back to the initial point that we started on and click that. And now you can see that we've created our rectangle. So now you can do various things with this rectangle. One thing that it's always good to do is to do what's called the drag test. So once you've created the rectangle, to make sure the points are attached where you want them to be to actually make the rectangle, is you want to click on that object and drag it around and make sure all of the points are connected in the way that we want it, so the rectangle should move with it. And also, if you go off to like a point B, you can change the dimensions of your rectangle, but you can see it always remains a rectangle because all these points are interrelated with the construction that we did. So it's always going to be a rectangle, although we can move it around, we can change its size, we can change the position of these various points to get what we want, but everything is always, or the object itself is always going to remain a rectangle. Notice that we can't move point D around like we can the other points. Why is that? Because D is defined as the intersection between these two different lines. So D is a fixed point. It's fixed by the constraints of the way that we've built this rectangle. So that you're unable to move around. And even C, you can move up or down, but you can't move it laterally like you can with A and B. Why is that? Because C was created to be on this line, so it has to stay on this line now. And that's why no matter how we move this around, the construction will always remain the rectangle like what we want it to be. Okay, so the next thing that you can do, look out here in the graphics menu. If you right click, you can open up the navigation bar. And so the navigation bar allows you to replay your construction steps. So if you go back here, it's kind of a little player. So you can see that we had 9 steps in creating this rectangle. So we can go back to the very first step, and now you can actually just step through and see how we created the rectangle step by step. So it can be review all of the different steps that you can do. And so you can even get a little bit more fancy than that. If you go over to the right here and you open up the construction protocol, that'll basically give you all of the steps that you use to create the object, and you can actually put captions in here to describe what each step does. And another thing that's very nice that you can do is you can put breakpoints in here. So if some of these steps are related, like if we go back to step 1, maybe we don't want to see each of these steps individually. Maybe we don't want to see the creation of point A, creation of point B, and then a creation of the line segment. Maybe we just want to see the creation of the line segment. So you can make a check under the part that actually creates the line segment, and it'll actually kind of group all of these items together. Similarly, we can group the creation of this second line and C, point C, so maybe we'll group those together. And then that third side, so we'll go ahead and make that. And then the creation of the fourth side, maybe we only want to show it when we actually create that point. So you can set a breakpoint there. And then we've got all of our polygons are already kind of grouped together in that step number 9. And then so what you can do is you can say, go back to start and say show only breakpoints, and now it'll compress all of those steps together. And so now you can just see step 1 is creating that side, step 2 is creating the right side, step 3 creates the top side, step 4 creates the left side, and then the final step actually creates the rectangle itself. And so that's a nice way to kind of replay your constructions. If you're going through an interactive tutorial on how to do something, you can go through it step by step, You can add various text that you can add that'll show up as you go through each step, and you can make it very creative and interactive. And so the final thing that you can do here is we've got all these weird lines kind of sitting around here when we created our rectangle. Maybe we don't want to look at those lines. So if you go to the object itself, you can right click on it and you can say click on the show object, and you can actually remove that line. So if it's shown, you say show object, it'll remove it, and you don't have to look at it anymore. And so you can take off each of these lines that take away from the rectangle itself that was used in the construction but is not part of the rectangle. And so now you can just look at the rectangle itself. And you can even take away the points if you wanted to as well. But what happens if you now want to bring those lines back? You can't really see them anymore. So how do you get them back? One thing that you can do is you can change perspective back to the algebra perspective. And when you go back to the algebra perspective, now you can see everything that you created through that. The geometry view is still reflected in this algebra view. It's just that we weren't looking at it. So all of our points and their coordinates show up. You can see if we go through here and start changing point B around, all of these things are dynamically updating to reflect where all these things are located at, right? So these are all of our points, our polygon. These are our line segments and our lines. So you can see that when it's visible, it's shaded in blue here. So if we want to make, say, point A not visible, we just click on there, and you can see that it disappears. So we can actually take all of our points away if we wanted to, and not have our point labels, and just have the rectangle itself. Or you can go here and you can turn them all back on and make them visible again. And in that way, you can really control how you do things. And now, so you can go back to the geometry view if you want, and now you've got everything back again. It's kind of the defaults are still preset in GeoGebra, so if you want to bring the grid back, you have to go back and reselect that grid, right-click in the graphics area and reselect the grid. I can bring the axes back if I wanted to, turn them back off. So this is just a basic introduction, so play around with this. Go into GeoGebra and see if you can create the rectangle itself. Do the drag test, move it around, make sure that it does actually create the rectangle that you wanted and everything is interconnected properly. Go through, navigate through some steps, enter some breakpoints, step through your creations, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.